Hello BookTube, welcome back to my 2026 library tour. The previous part of my tour was rather paltry, so I decided today to do two parts of the tour. In this part, I'm going to be focusing on the Queen of Crime, Agatha Christie. I was, when I was younger, a big fan of detective fiction or mysteries. And as I have developed as a reader, I tend to cycle through interests, and it had been a long time since I had been interested in mysteries, and then I started to get back into Agatha Christie's work, although I think I have since cycled out. But I still have my Agatha Christie collection. So I'm going to talk a bit about what I have. Almost all of these are in omnibus editions, and I only have two mass market paperbacks, which I'm going to start with. So first is Hickory Dickory Dock. This is an Hercule Poirot novel. It is about Poirot figuring out a conspiracy behind a number of seemingly petty incidents that take place at a youth hostel. Sleeping Murder. This is Agatha Christie's last novel. She wrote it during the Blitz in World War II, fearing that she would not survive. So when Agatha Christie did die decades later, and after dozens more novels, her final two novels did end up being Curtain, which featured Hercule Poirot's last case, and Sleeping Murder, which, by Agatha Christie's hand at least, is the last Miss Marple novel, although not as final as Curtain is for Poirot. In this novel, two friends of Raymond West, Miss Marple's nephew, find an old house that the wife seems to remember and have an attachment to. And this leads to Miss Marple uncovering a long buried murder. Now on to the omnibuses. First is Agatha Christie's Detectives. This is from Avenel. And this omnibus includes The Murder at the Vicarage, which is the first Miss Marple novel. Dead Man's Folly, which is an Hercule Poirot novel. Sad Cypress, Towards Zero, and NRM. Of the 5 novels in this omnibus edition, I am rather fond of The Murder at the Vicarage. And I really need to give Dead Man's Folly another look, because when I read it a few years ago, I did not care for it. And I don't think I've read Sad Cypress, Towards Zero, or N or M. Next is 5 classic murder mysteries. This includes The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, The Secret Adversary, The Boomerang Clue, The Moving Finger, and Death Comes as the End. Of the 5, I have read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, which is one of Christie's most famous and controversial novels. It features Hercule Poirot. The Moving Finger, which is a Miss Marple novel, although quite frankly, the male lead probably could have done this on his own, and Miss Marple perhaps really was not necessary. And Death Comes as the End, which is a historical murder mystery set in ancient Egypt, which I have not read in this form, but I have read before. I have not read The Secret Adversary or The Boomerang Clue. 5 complete Miss Marple novels. These feature The Mirror Cracked, which is one of the later Miss Marple novels. It is set in a effectively gentrified St. Mary Mead, and features a film star moving into the village and the tragedy that ensues. A Caribbean mystery where Miss Marple is sent on a Caribbean holiday for her health and uncovers murder. Nemesis, which is a sort of sequel to a Caribbean mystery in which Miss Marple is tasked to figure out a cold case by a gentleman that she met in a Caribbean mystery. What Mrs. McGillicuddy saw, or 450 from Paddington, which Miss Marple has to figure out whether or not her friend did see a murder and what the story is behind it. And The Body in the Library, which is perhaps the best of the Miss Marple novels. It's the second one, and it features Miss Marple clearing the name of her best friend's husband, who discover when they wake up one morning that there's a body in their library. So I've read all of these and rather enjoy them. I am probably, I think, of Christie's work, I'm fondest of the Miss Marple novels. So again, with the Miss Marple Meets Murder. This omnibus also features The Mirror Cracked and The Moving Finger, and includes A Pocketful of Rye and At Bertram's Hotel. So Pocketful of Rye deals with a murder at a country house that has a servant that Miss Marple trained, and so Miss Marple gets involved. It is probably my personal favorite of the Miss Marple novels. And at Bertram's Hotel features Miss Marple going down to London for a brief holiday where she gets involved in a murder. 5 complete Hercule Poirot novels: Murder on the Orient Express, 13 at Dinner, The ABC Murders, Cards on the Table, and Death on the Nile. Of the 5, I have read Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile. I have not read 13 at Dinner, The ABC Murders, or Cards on the Table. So Murder on the Orient Express is, obviously there's a murder on the Orient Express and Poirot has to figure it out. And then Death on the Nile is Poirot is on vacation and he ends up, by happenstance, getting involved in a series of murders on the river cruise ship that he's on as it goes down the Nile. I am rather fond of Death on the Nile, although the last time I tried to read it did not quite work out for me, which was disappointing. And of course, Murder on the Orient Express is one of Miss Agatha Christie's greatest works. 5 complete novels of murder and detection. This includes 10 Little Indians, which is also known as And Then There Were None. Peril at the Inn House, The Murder at Hazel Moor, Easy to Kill, and Evil Under the Sun. Of the 5, I have read And Then There Were None, Peril at Inn House, and Evil Under the Sun. And Then There Were None is another candidate for Christie's greatest novel, and features a group of murderers gathered at a remote island resort or house, and they are slowly picked off one by one. Peril at Inn House, I don't remember much about. And Evil Under the Sun is Poirot going on holiday, and he's asked to figure out a murder that occurs at this hotel. There's a really good adaptation starring Maggie Smith and Diana Rigg from the early 80s. That's quite good. This is starring Miss Marple, which features A Murder is Announced, the body and copy another version of The Body in the Library and Murder with Mirrors. I have, of course, read all three. A Murder is Announced is about a murder. Basically, the setup is that there's a sort of a murder game being announced that turns into the real thing. And as luck would have it, Miss Marple is staying nearby, so she is able to figure out who did it. And Murder with Mirrors features Miss Marple being asked by a school friend to look after or into the affairs of the friend's sister, who is also a friend of Miss Marple, who has turned her estate into a reformatory for criminal boys under the guidance of her husband. And finally, Murderers Abroad, which features They Came to Baghdad, Murder in Mesopotamia, The Mystery of the Blue Train, Passenger to Frankfurt, and So Many Steps to Death. Of the five, I have only read Passenger to Frankfurt. It is rather a spy thriller novel about a guy who gets wrapped up in some old Nazi plots. It's not really very good. So that's my Agatha Christie collection. I will probably take Friday off from the tour, and I might also take off the weekend so I can figure out exactly how I'm going to do the science fiction part of this tour. My science fiction and fantasy collection is out in the hall in a very small bookcase that is double stacked and stacked on top of each other, and there are two boxes, so I need to figure out exactly how I'm going to manage it. I think what I will do is I will probably start with the Transwise books and then just gather all of them together and go through them, and then go through the boxes and then work my way through the books that are on the shelves. My hope is that I can hopefully read through the science fiction and fantasy to see, okay, what do I want to keep, what do I want to get rid of, and also to better organize that shelf or that bookcase so that things work out better. But that's the subject of a different part of this tour, so I will leave you with thank you, BookTube. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on the next part of the library tour. Until then.